Hello all, Rick here with a truly formidable vessel of Klingon design. We've seen so often what Starfleet can create in an era when it puts all its best technology in one place, so let's take a look at what the Klingons came up with when doing the same thing. The Negh'Var was created as a variation of the Vor'cha class model, designed by Rick Sternbach and Gregory Jean. This makes it akin to a kit bash, although it was never a merger of other designs. You can tell the closeness to the Vor'cha design easily from how it looks, the colour scheme, hull plating, general shape and positioning of identifiable design elements to make their lineage clear. It was created for All Good Things, the finale for the Next Generation in 1994, and was quite simply to be a future Vor'cha design. But extensive efforts was made to not just create an already existing ship with bits stuck on. While this ship appeared in a vanished timeline, the model was repurposed as the new Klingon flagship introduced in Deep Space Nine. There are several variations of the class, such as ones without the four antenna-like disruptor, or one without the underslung cannons. So, while first added for the future, then being added into the main continuity of the shows, but it fits rather nicely and is reflected in the lore. In the late 24th century, the Klingon Empire made the decision to modernise its fleet from the continual alternate D7 and Katinga classes it was churning out, while the Empire was working on the Vor'cha class cruiser, which itself was more versatile and combat capable than the rest of the Imperial fleet. But they made a number of revolutionary advances. Effectively, while adapting the new design premises to what would become the Vor'cha class, the construction engineers began exploring the upper limits of the technology they were incorporating and realised its potential was limited by the scale of the ship they were constructing. While perfectly suitable for the new Vor'cha class, a bigger ship could support similar systems with even more power behind it. However, the Vor'cha project was to be completed first, already underway as it was, and allocated to the higher-ups of the Empire. As that class entered full production as an established design, engineers were able to turn their attention back to the discoveries and theories they had earmarked during the development process. So began work on the Negh'Var warship, while the Vor'cha was going into full swing from House Palkar's engineering team in 2367. In many ways, from design lineage to technical schematics, the Negh'Var is basically a souped-up Vor'cha, its bigger brother if you will. Its lead designer was Kurak, daughter of Helika of House Palkar. The project itself, publicly, consisted of theory craft, with the Empire taking great pains to hide the actual construction of the vessel. In part, this is because the Empire was unknowingly being manipulated by a changeling imposter into war with the Cardassians and the United Federation of Planets, so secrecy was paramount. Its main construction site was the Kronos Orbital Factory. The vessel was to be a slower but more powerful battle cruiser, eclipsing even its prior contemporary. Its mission profile was simply to outgun anything Starfleet or the Cardassians could throw at them, and was unusual for a Klingon vessel in that it sacrificed even more manoeuvrability in favour of firepower. While the Klingons do enjoy more weapons, they equally pride themselves in creating agile skirmishers like the Bird of Prey, and even the Katinga was surprisingly agile for a cruiser. As a flagship, it was heavily armed and protected, also acting as a command hub for fleet actions. Additionally, it could carry huge stores of supplies for its troops, suggesting that it was capable of siege activities too. The first of its kind was seen later that year and made the Chancellor's flagship, named the IKS 7500 Negh'Var, replacing the IKS Bortus, which was reassigned. The Negh'Var made an imposing first impression to the Federation as the largest and most formidable warship the Empire had ever created, and it was deployed against the Cardassian Union. Manufacturing of these ships would continue alongside the Vor'cha and Katinga classes, and as the Dominion War erupted, the Klingon Empire had constructed more of these tremendous warships. In 2370, the Katinga was the main cruiser, while the Vor'cha was the elite vessel, and barely 5 years later, the Vor'cha was now the main cruiser, while the Negh'Var was the new elite. From an alternate future, we saw that this class remained in service with alterations until at least 2404, which would not be surprising following the trend of Klingon designs. The warship was 682 metres long, 470 wide and 137 tall. This makes it 3 metres shorter than the Federation's Sovereign class, but it did outweigh it with a mass total of 4,310,000 tonnes, over 1 million more than the Sovereign. It consisted of 24 decks and could carry a maximum crew of 2,700, which included warriors for deployment. It continued the trend of utilising 2 matter-antimatter reactors, these being the STN-7 model with a cruise factor of warp 6, a maximum speed of 9.2 and an unsafe upper limit of 9.6. The vessel could run off a single reactor if needed, but not attain its maximum warp. Interesting tidbit, the additional underslung weapons pods also contained backup warp coils, so that in an emergency it could use these to generate a field. It featured 4 KIF-1 impulse reactors. The main computer was the Kehuric L-22. Now, in terms of armaments, it had the main 4 disruptor, which was the largest disruptor in the fleet, potentially the Alpha Quadrant. It had a further 4 large cannons on the wingtips and 2 pulse gravitic disruptor cannons. Over its hull were 14 other cannon turrets, providing full coverage, and it had 4 torpedo launchers, 2 fore and 2 aft, which fired in bursts of 3. Much of this was forward-facing, as is Klingon preference, but thanks to the slower turn rate, extra thought was given to covering the ship at all angles. Speaking of, its layers of armour were more extensive than prior ships, with the not idle boast that its armour was as effective as a second layer of main shielding. It also had a structural integrity field that could support triple the necessary strain to operate, meaning that this vessel was one of the hardiest in the quadrant. Of course, it was still armed with a cloaking device, the specifications of which are varied depending on the model and vulnerabilities uncovered. In terms of auxiliary craft, it had a complement of 20 shuttlecraft, and was designed to have a detachable scout ship on top. However, like the aero shuttle of the Intrepid class, this was never seen on screen, only referenced behind the scenes. The Negh'Var was the mightiest vessel created by an Alpha or Beta Quadrant allied power during the Dominion War, but not without its weaknesses. It was slow in combat and could be outmanoeuvred, and while it had backups for its nacelles, combat and even additional armour, taking out even one of its twin reactors would severely hamper the craft. The best point to attack the vessel was from below, where it had the least coverage. They are impressive vessels that played a major role in the Klingons' operations of the Dominion War, and excluding the Borg, the Dominion battleship is probably the only other vessel that can give it a run for its money in many ways. The ship reminds me of the Klingons themselves, with its extensive redundancies and ability to take a hit and just keep going, something that you would definitely want for a command battleship in a major engagement. Thanks for watching this breakdown of the Negh'Var. I've been Rick, and until the next time, glory to you and your house.